More on where this is all going. I spoke earlier to Robert Malley, a former Middle East advisor in the Clinton White House. He now runs the Middle East and North Africa program for the International Crisis Group. Robert Malley, do the Western allies have a clear objective?
Well, there's the objective that's laid out in the Security Council resolution, which is to prevent Colonel Gaddafi from hurting his own people. That may sound specific, but it actually is quite vague when it comes to implementing it. And we're seeing that happen already now with some dissonance between what the West is doing and what Arab countries are complaining about. The issue, of course, is it's one thing to simply have a no-fly zone. That's pretty straightforward. It gets more complicated when, as the resolution says, the goal is to stop Colonel Gaddafi's forces from entering Benghazi in the east. I guess that you could do by stopping the heavy fighting, the tanks and others from getting to Benghazi. But what about if some of those forces are in Benghazi? What about if Colonel Gaddafi is doing things in other parts of the country? That's where it becomes complicated, and that's where this could become a slippery slope and could start generating unease in the Arab countries and in other places of the world where they had initially thought maybe they thought they were buying into something more limited, or maybe they simply hadn't thought through to its logical conclusion what had been adopted.
Given those potential complications that you've outlined, are the US and its allies going to be able to keep this as a limited military action?
I think that is the question. Again, at some point, it may start begging the question, can you achieve those objectives as long as Colonel Gaddafi is in power? Now, President Obama and others are making clear they want him to go. They've said that from the beginning. But at the same time, they're saying this mission is not intended to implement regime change. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to hold that distinction for much longer because, again, if you identify Colonel Gaddafi as the threat to the well-being and to the lives of his citizens, then there may be no other way, logically, to implement the decision so long as he's in power. I suspect what they're going to try to do, what Western powers and others are going to try to do, is create conditions under which internal dissent, the rebel force, others close to Gaddafi may turn against Gaddafi and the rebels may have enough power to overthrow him. It may not work that way, in which case, again, I think they're going to be facing this real dilemma. Where do you stop? And at what point does continuation of the operation either drag those powers into a new quagmire, or does it start generating opposition in the Arab world? Perhaps opposition within Libya itself. This may have been morally the right thing to do, but politically and militarily it's going to get very, very complicated.
Colonel Gaddafi hasn't exactly shown over the years that he is a rational operator. What makes the Western allies think that he'll respond to airstrikes in a predictable or conventional manner?
Well, I'm not sure what they're expecting, although it's true that in the past, like after President Reagan bombed Gaddafi's compound, he stopped some of his activities. He is known to give in sometimes to pressure, but my sense is right now their objective is to squeeze him, to tighten the noose, as President Obama said, not just through the sanctions, but now the military means, and they're hoping through greater internal dissent, strengthening the rebel force, and creating a division within the ranks that are close to Gaddafi. Of course, even if Gaddafi were to fall, and I'm sure a lot of people are hoping to see that happen, what will then happen to Libya?
So what do you think is Colonel Gaddafi's next move?
I think right now he's simply playing for time and hoping that he could outlast his adversaries. He's been able to govern Libya and to rule it with an iron fist, and through not only an iron fist, but through co-opting tribes, through the use of money and other methods. And he's probably counting on the fact that he knows his country better than those who are now trying to dislodge him.
More broadly, we've seen so much upheaval in the Middle East right across the region in recent months. Why now for a Western intervention?
I believe, at least speaking in the case of President Obama, what motivated him was the notion that he did not want to be the president on whose watch there would be another mass massacre as happened in Srebrenica in the Balkans or in Rwanda. Whether that analogy was correct or not is another matter, but I think it truly was a decisive factor for him. Again, one can only hope that this is not an operation where people have thought of step 1 and 2, but also steps 3, 4, and 5, because this could drag on, and this could. I'm not saying it will happen, but it could go on, and it could become far more complicated than the planners had in mind.
Robert Malley, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.